wormholes, particle physics, extra dimensions. Are the wonders of so-called reality really what they appear to be? Or do we exist in an elaborate hologram? Is our universe the result of random activity or the result of intelligent design? If a creator was involved, can we discover him through our perception of divine order? This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
Hello and welcome to Into the Multiverse. I am your host, Josh Peck. I'm very excited for this very first program. I am joined today by my wonderful wife, Christina Peck. Christina, how are you doing?
Good to be here.
Absolutely, as am I. Well, if you haven't had a chance to already, you can subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/SkywatchTV_official. You can also check us out on Roku. And don't forget to check skywatchtv.com for other programs, lots of great information and articles. Now, I'm sure the audience is probably wondering about our backgrounds and why we're even doing this. So why don't we start with you, Christina? Multiverse, science, how did you get interested in all this?
Always have been into science, always loved studying cosmology and astronomy. I, for the longest time, had my mind made up from the time I was a very small child that I was going to enter the Air Force, become a pilot, and then move my way up, work with NASA, and become a satellite engineer. Actually, an astronaut to go up and actually work on the satellites. But at age 14, I was in a very bad car accident, changed my life forever. Never able to do it. So it didn't kill my love and passion for physics and astronomy or anything like that. So now I'm just a big nerd watching all these science shows.
It's part of why I love you, and it's similar with me. I'm a big science nerd as well. I even ever since I was a kid, and always had questions about aliens that the church I was in at the time wasn't answering. But that's okay. They didn't know, so I wanted to find an answer, and I had always been interested in science, but I didn't know how science and religion connected, if at all. So there was always this dichotomy sort of thing that I had to deal with. My love for science and my Christianity kind of existed in two different worlds. But later on in life, I discovered a lot through you that even a strange science like quantum physics can be applied to the Bible. And most excitingly, you don't have to be an absolute genius to understand this stuff.
Right.
And
right.
It blew my mind. So going from then on forward, I decided that I wanted to write books, and which I've done. And actually, I have a couple of them here. And the reason I bring these up, these are Quantum Creation Cherubim Chariots. The reason I bring these up is if you go to skywatchtvstore.com, they're running a deal right now. Both books $29.95, which is an excellent deal, which is a $40 value. So it's a good thing if you're interested in this sort of stuff. But that was really kind of my introduction into how to apply science into religion, how to look at this stuff from a biblical worldview.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my background, but the audience at home might want to know more about us as people. We are married.
Yes, we're married. We have, at the moment, 2 children, one on the way.
One on the way.
So due either September 1st or September 12th. Those are the 2 dates up in the air right now. We'll find out more in a few weeks. But and everything is exciting for the most part.
Yes, we've been
married for 6.5 years.
Yep.
Met at McDonald's. It's a romantic story.
Yeah, if people want more information on that, they can go into past episodes of Skywatch TV where we were interviewed by Derek Gilbert about our past and our whole dynamic here.
Yes.
So, but yeah, we've been working for Skywatch TV for about a month now?
Yep.
And lots of exciting things happening, so we are thrilled to be here.
Very exciting. It's a great opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, I think the people at home might want to know what the show's all about, what the multiverse is, so we could get into that.
You can start explaining it to them.
That would be a good idea.
So they don't feel scared.
Yeah. So, well, when we talk about the multiverse, we're not exactly talking about the universe. They're actually two different concepts. The universe is really just one section of the entire multiverse. If we take a sheet of paper, like in a book such as this, we could take one single piece and think of that one piece as our universe. Now, when we look at a piece of paper, we're dealing with something basically in two dimensions. We have up and down, left and right, and we don't really consider the thickness because it's so thin. Now, when you stack these together, you have more of a three-dimensional object, a stack of papers. Now, we can take that same concept and think of the multiverse in that way if we increase the dimensions. So instead of two-dimensional object like a piece of paper, we can think of our universe as the three-dimensional object that it is. Now, if we stack, in a sense, stack three-dimensional objects on top of each other into more dimensions, then we have an extra-dimensional construct. That's what the multiverse is, and I know a lot of that is going to sound a little out there right now, but these are the types of things that we're going to talk about in the show, and we're going to explain it in a way that people can understand. Yes. We're talking about God's creation, really.
Yes. Yep.
We're talking about the building blocks. We're talking about things called brains,
yes,
membranes, and the bulk, which is the extra dimensional space that they fill.
And I mean, the whole creation story in Genesis, it can be, this can be applied to it. God, you don't have to be afraid of science, and that's what a lot of Christians are, afraid of science, because they feel like that's a man-made thing. It's not. God made science, and he wrote the laws for all physics and all science. So we don't have to be afraid of these things. Even reading in Genesis, God created light, and in setting everything, the stars in the heavens, the sun, the moon, everything, you can see the physics involved. I'm not downplaying the miracle of God's creation at all, but you can relate the two.
Exactly. Science, I think, when taken from a biblical view, it's the study of God's creation.
Exactly.
And why we love quantum physics so much is it's the study of the building blocks of his creation, the actual materials that he uses.
It's like the amino acids for the building blocks of life that he created. How our blood moves through our system. You can relate it all. Quantum physics is like, it's the micro that runs the macro.
And that's what quantum means. It's the absolute smallest of the small, the foundational or elementary particles that we're talking about. That's what, when we talk about a quantum scale or quantum physics, it's the physics of these tiny, indivisible particles. But it also gets into areas such as extra dimensions.
Yes.
And something that we'll be talking about in later programs, the idea of flatland and how that can help us understand what a higher dimension really is.
Absolutely. If you look at a straight line on a piece of paper, we see it as a straight line, but if that line had a consciousness looking up at us, it would not know what hit it.
Exactly.
It would be very confused, like there's something else out there. And again, in multiple places in the Bible, we can bring that up later too, the visions people have had in the Bible looking through extra dimensions, and John's experience in Revelation. He was there. He saw the extra dimensions of the heavens and what's there. And he couldn't explain some of the things. Some of the things he was told not to talk about, but there are things that he could not explain.
And even Paul, he wrote about when he saw the heavens, when he went to heaven, that it was unlawful to speak about the things that he saw. And that leaves that leaves us to wonder, was it unlawful because God told him not to,
right,
or was it just so out of his element and you're not able to process what he was seeing? Maybe that was why it was unlawful. We don't know for sure, but yeah, there's examples of that all throughout the Bible. Ezekiel, we should probably do a whole episode.
Oh my goodness, wheel within a wheel, and talk about hypersphere.
yeah, exactly. It was actually Dr. Michael Lake was the first one, and that was after I wrote Cherubim Chariots, which I talk about. I go into depth on Ezekiel's vision,
and it definitely makes sense, hypersphere, and because look at a tesseract.
Yep.
And how you can unravel that and It's incredible.
Yeah, and just for the audience, just so we're not talking over anyone's head, a tesseract is it's a hypercube, which is a cube of more spatial dimensions, more dimensions of space than a regular cube. So a 4-dimensional cube is a hypercube, and then when that is unfolded into 3 dimensions, we call that a tesseract. And I promise we will get more into that. We could devote easily a whole episode to just that because it's fascinating, but that does have to do with the flatland examples that we will be getting into in later episodes.
More in depth, absolutely. Yeah, there's so much to talk about.
There really is. Now, before we get too much further into this, I do want to take a break because Skywatch TV is putting on an amazing writing contest that if you haven't had a chance to check this out, consider it. I think this is something that you will enjoy, so we will be right back.
To celebrate the release of Nita Horn's inspiring new book, No Fences, Skywatch TV would like you to tell your story because, after all, even if you don't think so, you actually have a story.
Send in your story, and we are going to choose the 10 best, and they'll be published for Christmas release in an anthology of those stories, along with the book that you buy that is actually only $19.95. Am I right on that?
That's correct.
For free. Tom Horn, crazy guy, he's throwing in a journal which on its own, most of these retail for $20 on their own. So this journal is to help you start writing your story. When you buy the book, not only are you going to be enrolled in this and you can send in your story, but you'll get a plastic pony, you'll get a journal of your own, and the proceeds from the book are going to help fund the studio we're building for Skywatch Women. And Nita Horn is going to be one of our panel members.
The 10 authors who are selected for the anthology published by Defender Publishing in time for Christmas will also receive a $500 cash prize.
And that'll go a long way at Christmas time, won't it?
Yes, it will. Even if your story is not one of those selected for the anthology, if you've taken the time to write your story, you've left a legacy for your children and for your grandchildren.
Amen to that.
For complete instructions and details on this opportunity, please log on to skywatchtv.com/nofences.
All right, and we are back. So where we left off, I would think the audience might be wondering, why should Christians care?
Well, I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. A lot of Christians are scared of science, and either if they feel, okay, it might be over their heads, which it's not, anybody can understand this, or the fact that people want to separate Christian from science, and you don't have to. And I think that's a big reason why they don't talk about it, or they're afraid of it. They want to stay away from it. I think that's a really big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And I've noticed that with some Christians too. And it's refreshing to know that we don't have to completely throw science away.
Right.
The difference is it comes to problem of observation and interpretation.
Exactly.
This is something I've talked about in my books and on various interviews and things, but observation is when an experiment is done, or you can show something scientifically that this is how reality works, and you can show it. Now, an interpretation is what that means to the person explaining it. Many times, physicists or scientists of really any kind, they'll make an observation, say, Charles Darwin made lots of observations in the Galapagos Islands, but he put his own interpretation on what those observations meant.
Exactly.
Certain animals look like one another, so his interpretation was the theory of evolution.
Evolution, natural selection, or survival of the fittest, I mean. And theory is different than science fact. A theory is just a hypothetical guess. A fact, science fact, is actually when you do the test. You get the control group and you actually run through and find out what actually happens.
Yeah.
Because they switch their stories around about the Big Bang a lot. Like,
there's a ton
it's,
of theories.
You know,
Sure.
like this big, or it was this big, and then this happened, and then they're like, oh no, never mind, that didn't work
Yeah.
this way, it was this way. And so, they're all just theories.
And most of those theories, those scientific theories, add up to eventually there's no God, there's no creator, it's this process that
Right.
happened. And I think that's why a lot of Christians have a problem with it. But if we learn to separate observation from interpretation, we can take out the interpretation and still keep the science and then interpret it ourselves.
Right.
And through the Bible or through a Christian worldview, which that's what this whole show is all about. It's taking quantum physics, taking away the interpretations that many physicists and other scientists have put on these observations and trying to replace it with a biblical worldview, such as that of extra dimensions. We could easily look at that and say these are the heavens, or these are spiritual places that we already believe in anyway. And I really do believe that the term extra dimensional and the term spiritual can be almost synonymous when all the interpretations are taken away. And going along with the interpretation thing too, we have to realize we as Christians do that too.
Absolutely.
You can take one Bible verse and get 5 different interpretations from 5 different people, but but if we have the realization that, you know, we're human, we're limited, it can keep us humble and teach us humility, but it's important to have that mindset and going forward with learning about science and things like that.
Absolutely. It's also very fascinating getting into the time and the space and everything too, how God stopped the earth from moving for a day. You know, what kind of things did that cause for our day today, you know, our time today, you know, since there's a day lost back there, you know? Does having a leap year have something to do with it, maybe? I don't know. That's just a guess of mine. You know, it's a possibility.
Yeah, there's also prophetic implications to a lot of these scientific advancements. You know, I when I write my articles and my blog and things like that, I've been ending a lot of them lately with, we're headed towards a quantum future because there's so many technologies that are quantum-based now, utilizing strange things like quantum entanglement, which is absolutely something we will be getting into in the show because it is fascinating. But scientists will use things like quantum entanglement to create supercomputers or even trying to develop some type of artificial intelligence with a lot of these quantum discoveries that are being made every day. Every year there's a new particle being not created, but being discovered. Thank you. And it's fascinating. So on one hand, I can understand why people would be hesitant. Science kind of gives off this aura that you have to be a genius or you have to have a master's degree in something to understand these things, and you really don't.
No.
If we look at science as the study of God's creation, God is accessible.
Absolutely.
And
he is.
studying his creation, at least the basics, should be accessible to anybody. So I really fully believe that these things are accessible. It's more of a language problem than anything.
Yeah, they speak in these big, long terms, and, you know, you can easily break it down. And starting from the beginning, you know, and the more you study, the more you understand, and the more you can learn, and the higher, you know, you can go with science and quantum physics and things like that. So, yeah, it's absolutely a language barrier because they do say these very long words.
Yeah.
You know, I would sit there and watch these shows for a long time. You know, I wouldn't understand how to say these words, but I kind of knew what they were talking about.
Yeah, it takes a while because for me, when I would read something, I'd have to have a dictionary right next to me to look up the word and try to understand what they're saying. So, but it really the actual science wasn't that hard to grasp. It was the language that is being used to convey it to the general public, people like you and me, you know, laymen. And so I really think that once that language barrier is taken out of the way, these concepts are simple enough that it'll really get us thinking, but also knowing that, you know, we're not going to know everything. We have limited perception. There's going to be some things that are more mysterious, but I kind of think that's the fun of it. I mean, who doesn't love a good mystery?
Oh, I know. As a child, I always had to wrap my mind around, like, God had a beginning, or it never had a beginning. I had the beginning.
Yeah.
But God never had the beginning. How was he there forever? I could never understand. And it drove me nuts trying to figure it out. So ever since I was a child, I would sit down and have these conversations with my parents and my sister. She's very, very smart. So, she can understand these big words like I can't. But, we would sit down and talk for hours. My dad and I would sit down and talk about heaven for hours because to me that was so otherworldly. That's so other extra dimensional.
Yeah.
How is there this place out there we can't reach right now? How do we get there? It was so fascinating to me, and we talk about it for forever.
Yeah, and the amazing thing, which we will get into in another show, is how close heaven actually is all around us. Now, I'm sure the audience probably wants to know more about what they can expect from the show, what kind of show is this going to be, what can the audience expect? And the simple answer is everything from the multiverse is everything in the multiverse, which is everything. It's all of God's creation. Everything from the smallest elementary particle to brains, membranes, extra-dimensional membranes in the bulk and things like that.
And we'll actually be able to back it up with some scripture. So, it's going to be important.
That's really important and I'm glad that you mentioned that too, because we're going to be viewing science, especially quantum physics, through a biblical lens. I can't stress that enough because that really is what is most important to us, our faith in God and interpreting everything through the Bible. Now, also, we're just going to have a lot of fun. This show's going to be a blast. It's not going to be over anyone's head. You're not going to have to worry about getting a science lesson every time you watch. You're not in a classroom. We're going to be having fun and fellowship. That's what we're all about. But just appreciating the majesty of God's creation from a quantum scale all the way to the largest that we could possibly talk about.
Right, exactly. Really getting into the dimensions, what they mean, and how they work, and more on that flatland.
Yeah.
So viewers can understand what flatland is and how it would look to a two-dimensional creature if a three-dimensional creature walked in, and then if we as three-dimensional beings, something four-dimensional came in, what would we do?
Exactly.
So
yeah, and we can use that as an example of how God communicates to us.
Exactly.
And actually, that's a good introduction to next week's episode, which we will be talking about the fourth dimensions. More than one. There are two fourth dimensions. Now, I know that sounds confusing, but I promise we will lay it out and it will make sense and it's going to be a blast. We're going to talk more about flatland, the difference between spatial dimensions and temporal dimensions, and what this all has to do with each and every one of us. Why we care about it, why we're passionate about it, and why we should get excited about this. Now, we should probably talk about where people can find the show.
Yeah, no problem. You can find it on youtube.com/skywatchtv_official.
Absolutely, and you can also find it on Roku. And if you go to skywatchtv.com, you'll find a lot more programs and articles and lots of interesting things. Now, I do want to point out one more time that my two books, I have Quantum Creation, Cherubim Chariots. It's all about this kind of stuff that we're talking about. Quantum Creation is more about the quantum stuff. Cherubim Chariots is more about extra-dimensional vehicles, UFOs, what aliens are from a biblical lens, all that sort of stuff. Right now, Skywatch TV is offering these two books, which is a $40 value, at $29.95. So go to Skywatch TV Store.com and you will be able to find that deal there and take advantage of that. So absolutely fascinating stuff. I am just thrilled to be doing this show with you and that we get to talk about this.
This is stuff we talk about every day, but this is even better, sharing it with everybody else. This is going to be a lot of fun.
It really is. I couldn't agree more. Well, all of that being said, I want to thank you all so much for joining us and just going into the multiverse with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out Skywatch TV, all that fun stuff. And until next time, thank you for watching, take care, and God bless.
From the time she was little, Nita dreamed of horses. Every childhood fantasy rode on the back of a heroic white steed, coming to save the day.
I
I don't know how long I've had this love in my heart for horses. It's just always been there. And when we were little girls, my sister and I would play all day long. I was always the white horse and she was always the little pink pig.
Let's pretend Lightning and Rosie can fly.
But everything changed in a heartbeat. On December 9th, 1971, a tragic car accident claimed the life of my dad and my best friend and my little sister. And I wondered after that if there was anything left to believe in.
Move aside, let the ambulance through. Please move aside.
As a child of 13, I felt like I had lost practically everything. And I wondered, is this it? I mean, where do I go from here? I could not have imagined back then how God could use horses, of all things, to restore my faith and vision for the future.
Starting April 19th, get your copy of Nita Horn's inspirational new book, No Fences, and learn for the first time her amazing story of loss, survival, determination, and healing. How the vision and love God gave her for these beautiful and majestic animals eventually led to the 150-acre Whispering Ponies Ranch, a general retreat facility, as well as a premier training location that specializes in using and gifting therapeutic animals to benefit the herding. Other care facilities, schools, and ministries across the nation.
When God puts something in your heart, it's there for a lifetime.